Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I am a senior teacher in Green Country English School. Welcome to the webinar on lesson formats and approaches. At the beginning, I'd like to mention a few important things. The first thing, probably you have noticed that everyone is on mute, so your microphone is not working. That is because we are expecting 100 participants approximately. That's why we will work in the format of more like a lecture where I speak, but you're welcome to leave your comments and feedback and maybe questions if you have any in the group chat. I will have a special question answer session at the end of this webinar. And I will try to answer all of your questions, but you can send them right away as soon as you have them. As I've already said, my name is Maria. You can address me as well. And our school is offering a series of free webinars for teachers, for tutors, for everyone who wants to improve their teaching skills and teach English better. Today we will speak about lesson formats and approaches. And for that, I'll use a simple presentation that I've designed especially for you, especially for this webinar. Well, let's begin. To start with approaches, I have some sort of a puzzle for you. There are two basic types of approaches. The first one that comes from generalization or rule, so from something general, and moves to specific examples. And the second one that focuses on specific examples and then moves to the general thing. I'd like to ask you a question. Those who want to participate and interact a little bit, will you please send me your ideas? What are the names of these basic approaches that can be used for teaching English and for some other spheres of our life? If you know the answer or if you want to guess, feel free to use the group chat and send the ideas. I'll give you a hint, maybe a key to the answer. It has something to do with maybe Sherlock Holmes. Any ideas? Well, no brave people today. Okay, anyway, I will show you the first approach and the first method. Oh yeah, Tatiana, yeah, it takes some time. Yeah, deduction, inductive, deductive. Good job, great. It takes some time maybe to type the names. Great, congratulations. So you are absolutely right. The first one, is it inductive or deductive? It is, I think you know, it is deductive. Yeah, so when you present the rule, for example, grammar rule, and then you move your students to some specific examples and you bring them some specific activities and tasks which help them to remember this rule better and start using it. And the second one is inductive, as far as you can see over here. Yeah, so it works vice versa, where you can bring something, some sort of the context to your students and make them notice the repeated pattern, the repeated rule throughout this context, and your students will then formulate probably on their own the rule itself. Well, there are just two simple approaches and each of them has their advantages and disadvantages. I'm sure you know that mostly the books use the deductive approach. So if you teach English using a course book, very often you will see the picture of a deductive approach when there is a rule on the top, then a few exercises which move from the easiest one to the most difficult. Inductive approach is a little bit less common and may be seen as a little bit more challenging for teachers especially to use, but in the long run, it also has its own benefits. Well, moving on, not moving on yet, I'd like you to think of at least one benefit, one advantage of each approach of a deductive and inductive. And if it is possible, don't be shy, please send your comments in the group chat so that everyone can see the benefits of each approach. After that, I will comment a little bit more in detail on each of them. What do you think, guys? What can be its benefits? Well, if you are typing your comment, you will see if you were right with your guess or with your idea when I finish commenting on my own. Probably it doesn't work that fast. So focusing on the, you prefer deduction. I see. Inductive, it is very engaging. I agree. Yeah, definitely. Well, of course, if I ask you which one is easier to use and more simple, and which one we are used to really well, you will probably say that it is deductive approach. But it is often criticized. It is often criticized for many reasons. And the first reason is that it is not really student-centered, but it is more like teacher-centered. So the teacher is seen as a source, as a resource of the information, of the knowledge, like in an old-fashioned school. And the teacher is seen like the only source of the knowledge, or the book is seen as the only source of the knowledge. So the teacher brings the rule, then the students work. It is a little bit more mechanical. Of course, if you choose a really great topic that the students will be interested in, it can be fun, it can be interactive, it can be involving. Of course, it depends on the sort of activities, but the whole approach is a little bit teacher-centered because everything starts with a teacher. On the contrary, inductive approach, as Olena has commented here, is very engaging. Why it is engaging? Because it makes your students think. First of all, it makes them learn to analyze what they see. It makes them remember maybe the rules a little bit better. You know the feeling when you guess something, when you get it on your own, it stays with you like forever. But when someone tells you repeatedly the same rule, yeah, it flies and like around your head and sometimes doesn't get in that deep, as deep as we want it. So inductive approach is really engaging. Today we will discuss different lesson formats and we will analyze how deductive and inductive approach is used. But if at the beginning of this webinar you are asking yourself a question, or which one do you prefer, or which one is better? Well, there is no best approach. There are two of them, and we need to know how to use both of them in order to make our lessons different, and in order to provide our students with different needs, to provide for their needs. Well, I'd like to show you some patterns. Some patterns of a simple lesson formats that we will discuss today. And the first thing that you will do is guess pattern number 1 and pattern number 2. Which one of them is inductive and which one of them is deductive? Yay. We can see the comment as well. Yay. Hi, everyone. Yay. So number 1 and number 2. You can see that number 1 is presentation practice production. Yay. So that is a PPP lesson format. And number 2 is communication language focus practice and communication. Not very obvious, but it is a TBL format, yeah, task-based learning. Before we get deeper into the lesson formats, I'd like you to think, yeah, I already can see some answers. Number 1, is it inductive or deductive? And number 2, deductive or inductive? Right thing. Okay. Maybe some other answers? Have we got only 3-4 people here? Or everybody just feels lazy at the end of the day? Okay, yeah, I can see many answers, and the majority of them are correct. The first one, when you present the rule or you present some sort of vocabulary, then you give the practice, and at the end, students use this knowledge to produce some result. So number 1 is clearly deductive. You go from general to specific. General is like rule, and then specific examples, specific tasks. Help your students to memorize a little bit better. The second one is inductive. Where is induction here? you involve the students, you begin the lesson with the students, yeah, with their ideas, their discussion. So you have this communication at the beginning. You can offer them to discuss some sort of questions, even without them knowing the necessary grammar for it. You can rely on some students, on their prior knowledge a little bit, or you can let them just make a few mistakes. It's okay. But after that, they feel this need to know this grammar. For example, if you ask them about their plans for the weekend and they start using, for example, only future. Yep, there is a question, sure. I'll pause for a second because it seems like I've forgotten to mention an important thing. There will be the recording, the video available. It will be available tomorrow. Yeah, and it will be sent. And our administrator has already answered. Yeah, so don't worry. All the links that you would like to get at the end of this webinar, you will get them tomorrow together with the video, the recording of this webinar. Yeah. So moving back. You can offer your students some short and simple communication tasks for them to discuss something, to start with their own ideas, and for the students to feel the need to know this grammar. For example, if you ask them about their plans for the weekend and they just start using future, just future simple, when your grammar topic for the lesson will be going to, for example, or present continuous for arrangements. So obviously, yeah, at the early stage of communication, students will not use it, but later on, when you move to the language focus phase, you will be able to elicit this grammar from them. And I'd like you to think about the similarities and differences. I will not ask you to type the answers in the chat because it will take a lot of time, but I'm pretty sure you can notice that the similar thing is that there is practice. Yeah, practice is the thing that makes it perfect. So you cannot avoid the practice stage in any sort of approach, in any sort of lesson format. There are two types of practice. The first one is restricted practice, controlled practice. Maybe you have any ideas on what kind of activities are the part of controlled practice, controlled by the teacher? If yes, please send them right away. And there is a second type of practice, which is freer practice, or it can be called semi-controlled practice, when there is less control and it is closer to a production stage. Any ideas for restricted? Okay, restricted practice, it can be a very simple gap-filling exercise, or open the brackets, or matching the answers. So everything that has one correct answer, where students just need some restricted practice, controlled practice to remember better mechanically how this rule or pattern works. And semi-controlled or freer practice moves us to the production stage, where students are allowed to make their own questions or answers, or they work in pairs, interacting with each other, and where there are multiple different answers or sentences possible. Well, so that is a similarity. The difference over here is very easy to see, and it is very easy to feel the difference between deductive approach and inductive approach, just looking at the simple pattern. In the deductive approach, the presentation starts the lesson, so the teacher or the book presents what the students will study at this lesson. And in the second approach, the students start the lesson and they communicate. Of course, the task is given, the questions are given, but anyway, they are the origin, yeah, their ideas are the origin for all the continuation of the lesson. Well, right now we're going to move on, and after taking a close look at the patterns, I'd like you, oh, it works a little bit differently now, yay. I'd like you to look at the first lesson format that we will discuss today. This lesson format is PPP, Presentation, Practice, Production, an abbreviation that is like really easy to remember. And let's move on. Very often when someone mentions presentation practice, production approach, it can be seen in a shape of, guys, can you hear me? If yes, you can put the thumbs up, yeah, or just print yes, or just a plus. Yep. If your sound, thank you very much. If your sound is off, if your microphone isn't working, that is because this webinar will be on mute. So you will share your comments and your feedback just with the group chat, just in the group chat. Okay. So let's move back. Presentation practice production. Very often it is seen as a triangle. So everything starts at the top with the presentation, then practice and production. But I have a question for you. Why is it designed in that shape? Why exactly a triangle? Why can't it be a circle? Why can't it be a square or something like this? Why does it look like this? If you have any guesses or ideas, please write them down, type them and send. A little bit louder, okay, yeah, maybe you can adjust the speakers on the screen. The base is production, yeah, absolutely right, so that's the base. But we start from the top, yeah, we start from presentation. Production must be the longest, yeah, from the easiest to more difficult, of course. Yeah, it can be turned upside down. Yeah, it can be turned like that. Absolutely right. Yeah, but the main idea is that you are absolutely right. So the idea is that it is all about the time. And the time. So presentation normally takes less time to present the rule. Practice takes a little bit more time than presentation itself, and production is supposed to take the longest. The biggest part of any sort of lesson should be devoted to exactly production, to the stage where the students can actually use grammar, vocabulary, or whatever it was that you taught them at this lesson for their own needs while producing something. The examples of a good production stage can be a dialogue, can be a role play, can be creating something like a poster or a short presentation. So it depends, of course, on the topic of the lesson, but the production stage is a must-have at the end of each lesson, and we need to make sure that we do not speak a lot that our teacher speaking time is shorter than student speaking time, that we do not present for the half of the lesson, that we provide our students with necessary practice and production at the end. Well, basically, if you look at this lesson format, nothing seems difficult, and I'm sure that many of us use it quite often. But you need to remember that it is a didactic approach, and that means that presentation is teacher-led, and only 2 stages of the lesson will be student-led. So only in those 2 stages you can put your students in the center of the lesson. Yeah, I agree with you, Natalia, that teacher and student speaking time is different at each stage. Of course, it is difficult to imagine a presentation with a lot of student speaking time, of course, but you need to remember that the biggest part of your lesson should be about production, and you need to make sure that it is student-led, and the students get an opportunity to use the knowledge that you presented and practiced at the end of your lesson. Well, moving back to our approaches. So didactic approach might be seen as quite boring, quite an old-fashioned. If you open a book, a course book, you will see this presentation practice production. And students who have been learning English for a while, they feel bored very often because they they know what happens next, and so on and so forth. I'm not saying it is bad. Sometimes the routine is quite good for the students, but very often you want to spice things up, and you have no other choice. You just have this presentation practice production scheme that you are used to work on all the time, to work with all the time. What we can do to change this approach a little bit and to make it a little bit more student-centered and entertaining. Today we will take a look at a few examples that I've prepared for you. So if you take a look at the very first screenshot of the book, I'm pretty sure everyone who teaches English can recognize this book. Do you know the name of this book? If yes, I'd like to see it. Do you know where these 2 pages come from? Family and Friends. Yeah, Family and Friends too. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, that's one of the most popular books, I would say, from my experience, that is used everywhere in different courses, in schools, like in our city schools, and like everywhere. Yeah, Family and Friends. Many of us have used this book. Many of us like it. Many of us do not. But let's try and analyze which approach is used here, which approach is like the basic of this book. You can see the words over here, like the presentation of vocabulary. Yeah, you can see the presentation of grammar on the right. You can see some short practice. Of course, there are plenty of extra materials, some workbooks, some grammar books that you can use to provide some extra practice, to provide controlled practice, freer practice for students. And there is like a very short activity, which is meant to be something like production or a little bit freer practice, where students are offered to ask questions and give answers. And you see, as a teacher, very often, if you have worked with this book, very often you need to use a lot of supplementary materials to create a lesson based on this approach. But again, if every unit, if every lesson looks like this, presentation, practice, production, it becomes very predictable and not very entertaining for kids. What we do at Green Country, I will demonstrate what we have. In Green Country, I will share a lot of my mixed approach. Yeah, it depends on how you organize your lesson, of course. In Green Country, we use our own books. And even if it is, if we use presentation, practice, production approach, even if we work with young learners, because I deliberately have chosen the screenshot of the book for young learners from Family Friends too, we still can make it a little bit more entertaining. I will show you how we do that, and for that I will need, just a sec, I will need to demonstrate the platform that we work with. And maybe many of you have already heard that in Green Country we use blended learning. So that means that we use a very special approach to build our lessons, where the students have their self-studies, so they do some tasks before the lesson, they learn something before the lesson. I will demonstrate it as a teacher from my profile on Green Country online platform. And that helps us to move the presentation part away from the lesson. So the presentation part happens online, where students do their self-studies. They can watch different videos, for example. To show this, I've chosen more or less the equivalent of Family Friends 2, which is step 4. And for example, kids learn the topic of pet shop. They learn different animals, so they can see the pictures, the words, they can listen to the audio, they can watch the video. So everything that belongs to the presentation part, in our case, the presentation part of vocabulary. After that, in the self-study, they can complete the task, like a very simple and controlled practice, because it will be checked automatically. For example, match the part. Well, there is a cat and there is a cat, I matched it. Yeah, the second one is dog, and I matched with a dog. So the students have an opportunity to work on that presentation part and practice part, controlled practice part on their own, with the help of video games and so on. After that, when they come to the lesson, they have like a very short warm-up with the same vocabulary, a game on it, or just a chant or a song or something like that. And after that, what happens next? Happens the practice stage. So we spend a little bit more, not a little bit, much more time focusing on the practice part and of course production. If we look at the practice part that students will have at the lesson, I will show you what will happen at the lesson. So they will chant with the help of the video. They will have the practice where they just need to color and say everything, say the words that they have already heard in the videos at home. After that, there will be the production part where they need to draw, for example, their own pet shop. Yeah, so they will draw their own animals, and this way they will present their pet shop. This way, of course, production is very student-centered. Also, as a very nice example of a production later on in this topic, like at the last lesson for this topic, we will have something like a short project, like a craft for our students. I'll demonstrate a short video for you so that you can see how it works.
Hello, Maria. Hello, Arhelia. Do you like animals? Yes, I do. Let's create a pet shop. Good idea. Let's cut out and stick. Look, they are parrots. They are blue, yellow, and red. Look, they are turtles. They are slow. Look, they are cats. They like milk. Look, they are...
Okay, so over here, I suppose it is clear. So these are the examples of how we work with presentation, practice, production approach. At the same time, working with young learners, very young learners, as far as you can see from the video. And at the same time, it helps a lot to move the presentation part to the self-study. And that's how we spice things up when using such, someone would say, boring approach as didactic approach, presentation, practice, production. Of course, even without having the self-studies and everything, you can organize your lesson, even if we have a Fly High book or Family Friends book. Yeah, we can organize our lesson, but my message is that we shouldn't be limited to only the resources that we have in the book, and we need to make sure that the tasks that we offer our kids really are appropriate to their, really match their interests and everything. Yeah, the production stage, it is exciting, so even presentation, even PPP method will not be seen as such a boring thing. And now we're going to move on, and we will take a look at some other examples, at some other methods. Well, our next method that we need to discuss today is TBL. TBL, it is task-based learning. So remember the pattern that I showed a little bit earlier? For PPP, there were 3 stages, and for TBL, there were how many stages? Oh, that's so difficult when you cannot respond. Yeah, so there were 4 different stages. Yeah, thank you, Maria. Yeah, absolutely right. Well, I'd like you to think a little bit and try and identify the beginning and the end of each stage. I'll give you 30 seconds to read what happened at the lesson and try to identify. You don't need to comment, just focus on analyzing. So the beginning and the end of each stage. The first stage is communication. Then comes language focus, then practice, and communication again. Well, I'm pretty sure that everyone can easily identify the first stage, where the teacher tells about her or his family and asks students to do the same. That's the first stage, communication. The second stage, language focus, is when the teacher writes the parts, the structure I've got on the board and attracts students' attention to it. Then they drill a little bit, repeating, I've got a brother, I've got a mom, I've got a dad, and so on and so far. Drilling really helps at this stage, especially if we talk about young learners. Teacher focuses on pronunciation, on meaning, on form if necessary. After that comes the third stage, which is a practice stage. Controlled practice, gap filling exercise, mainly to see the difference between have got and has got. And after that, at the end, the teacher changes the groups and asks students to do the same, tell about their families again, but the listeners have to listen and draw family tree, basic picture of family tree. Those are the 4 simple stages of TBL. My question is, why is this TBL? So what is the task here? What is the basic task of this example of this lesson? Any ideas? In the chat, please. What sort of task there is? Communication. Maybe I wasn't specific enough. I mean, what kind of task is used as a basic of exactly this lesson? Yeah. Family tree, absolutely right. To tell about your family, yeah. Tell about your family, to be able to present your family tree, yeah, but yeah, you're right. I have deliberately chosen exactly this example for you to look at task-based learning for young learners. So I have a series of questions for you to think about when we look at this example. What level do you think is this class? What level is this class that we have just read about? Yep, elementary level. Absolutely right. Third, second grade, yeah, possibly elementary level. Absolutely right, yeah. And what do you think? Could the same lesson format, I mean TBL, communication, language focus, practice and communication again, work with other levels? Could it work with other levels? So if this one is primary, beginners, elementary, so could it work with higher levels? Yeah, okay. Will it be easier or more difficult to organize a TBL lesson with a higher level? Yeah, it will be much easier, yeah. Daria, you're welcome to send not private messages, but you can send the messages in the group chat, yeah, so that everybody will see, yeah. So I have deliberately chosen this very simple and basic example to just show that we very often underestimate the abilities of our learners. And if the teacher's reasons are not to use TBL, task-based approach, is that my students know almost nothing, they are elementary level, and so on. So no, it's not the excuse, because we can try and implement TBL approach, which is more student-centered, even with a low class level. Well, yeah, maybe the communication will not be as great as we would like it to be, but still it is possible. And one last question about this lesson example. Why do you think the teacher changed the groups, like swapped the groups around at the end of the lesson? Well, at the beginning, kids discussed their families in groups, and why did the teacher decide to change the groups for the final activity? Any ideas? Yeah, more practice. Production, okay, independent practice, I see. Yeah, well, your answers show that we are all like teachers, 100. Yeah, to get them more information about each other. Yeah, that's right. Well, there is one thing that we as teachers very often forget. Our students often learn English not for the sake of English, not to know English, but they come to our lessons to learn something new, to learn something maybe about each other, maybe to get some information about the world around them, and so on and so far. And if for us as teachers, it's okay to ask the group at the beginning to have the communication about their families, and at the end to have a communication, but better communication, because they have grammar, they have broadened vocabulary by the end of the lesson. So if for us it's okay, but for kids, it makes no sense for them. I've already told my partner about my family. Why would I do that again? Yeah, so it makes our students like feel a little bit demotivated. But my partner already knows how many brothers I have and that I have a cat as well. Yeah, so make sure that you keep in mind natural practice. Yeah, absolutely right. Better communication, better production. Make sure that we keep in mind our students' interests as well. Yeah, that we do not only focus on our educational goals. Yeah, they are living creatures. They want to interchange. Yeah, psychological approach. Cool, absolutely right. So they want to exchange the information with more people. Yeah, so yeah, that's the idea. We need to keep that in mind as well. Moving on from TBL, which is quite easy, to PBL. That is pretty much the same, but a little bit bigger, in a little bit bigger scale. Let's take a look. PBL approach puts not one single task like talking about your family or presenting your family, but puts a whole project into the center of learning. So the learning happens around the project. Today we will watch a video, and while watching this video, I'd like you to think about 3 questions. The first question is why PBL is efficient, why this approach is really efficient. The second one, what skills your students can develop if you use this approach. And the last one, how can teachers use PBL in teaching English? Because my example in the video will not be for an English class, it will be for a science class. But I'm sure you will get a little bit excited about PBL and how it works. So you can watch the video and think about the efficiency, skills, and how you can use it in your class. Let's go.
You remember what it was like in school. It was boring. You sat in class, memorized as much as you could, and tried to pass a test at the end. But is that good enough? These days, school can be more interesting and effective by focusing students on work that matters. This is project-based learning explained. Most adults live in a world of projects. Whether it's a job assignment, home improvement, or planning a wedding, we need to actively solve problems. But unfortunately, schoolwork looks more like this than this. Let's take a look at this project-based world. Meet Claire. She was recently presented with a challenge. Her company, Super Suds, makes soap, and it was up to her to find the most earth-friendly way to produce it in the future. Her boss gave her a budget and a few requirements, and it was up to her to come up with a solution. She organized and managed a team who researched the options and created materials summarizing the issues. Claire's team asked for feedback and presented their findings to the boss. Claire came out of the project looking like a rock star, and she learned a lot about green products. If you look closely, Claire's success involved critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. things that aren't often taught in traditional classrooms. The world needs more Claires, so how do we get them? The answer is project-based learning, or PBL. By focusing students on a project, teachers put them on a path that deepens their knowledge and builds skills they'll need in the future. Here's what I mean. Mr. Simmons has always been a good science teacher, and his students do well on Friday's tests. Unfortunately, what they learned was gone by Saturday morning. That wasn't good enough for him. Soon he learned about project-based learning and decided to give it a shot. Mr. Simmons got the idea for his first project on microorganisms when nearly half of his students were suddenly absent with the flu. He asked his students why they thought so many of their classmates got sick at the same time. That lively discussion produced a lot of good questions and a list of things the kids wanted to know. Mr. Simmons then announced their project was to help elementary school kids understand how can we not get sick. After dividing the class into teams, he got them started on the project. It was up to the students to ask questions, research, collaborate, give each other feedback, and figure out the best ways to make their points clear to children. One team chose to make an educational video on the connection between hand washing and avoiding the flu. Another chose to create posters to show how viruses spread. The project teams showed off their final work to an enthusiastic audience of parents and their children at a nearby elementary school. Sitting in the front row was our good friend and local rock star Claire, who saw a bit of herself in the students. It was clear that the project was a success for the students, the audience, and Mr. Simmons. His students practiced critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. The project wasn't about memorization, but learning in depth about viruses and how to prevent spreading disease, a lesson they will never forget. At the end of the presentation, Claire introduced herself to the students and told them that they were rock stars and that the world needs more people who can think like them. To learn.
Okay, guys, yeah, that's where we stop. Thank you very much for commenting during the video. Yeah, Luba, Daria, yep, absolutely right. These skills that you have mentioned, yep, teamwork, creativity, everything is there in PBL. I'm sure that everybody, yeah, connected with real world, absolutely right. So we teach, in this case, the teacher taught them not only the subject material, yeah, but the teacher taught his or her students much more. I'm sure that many of us start thinking, well, PBL, yeah, it's so cool, but how can we organize a project like this in our English lesson? I'm going to share my experience, how we organize project-based learning in Green Country, and after that, I will share some life hacks on how you can do it as well. But before that, I'd like you to pay attention to a slide where you can see 4 very important things of PBL.
For more about project-based learning, go to BIE.org.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we will go to BIE.org, sure. So over here, we are going to pay attention to 4 very important elements of PBL. So central topic. When you want to bring project-based learning in your class, you need to think of a central topic that will engage your students, that will give them a final objective. So what the project will be about. And it's very nice if the central topic can be connected with grammar and vocabulary that you need to teach your students in that period of time. The second one, which is crucial, it is access to means of investigation. So, well, yeah, nowadays everybody has got a smartphone, mostly everyone, or internet connection, so you can easily give your students an opportunity to do the research and find the necessary information for their projects online. Yay. The third element is interaction. Without interaction with each other, PBL becomes not PBL, yeah, because that is the approach which needs communication, interaction, and collaboration of the students. So it's not an individual task very often. And a final product, that's the last part. The final product, something that your students will be able to produce at the end. Like in the video, we saw the examples like poster or a short video or a presentation or something. So the product, the project that the kids will present at the end. PBL can be organized within a lesson, like with a very little project, within a unit. If you cover one unit in 3 or 4 lessons, for example, within a semester, why not? You can summarize like everything, different vocabulary and grammar topics, and put them into one bigger project and make sure that students use what you have learned during this course when completing their project and so on. So I'm going to show how we use TBL, task-based learning, and PBL with higher levels and like with kids who are like, if for example, the step 4 that I showed you before, with a PPP method, it was designed, the lesson was designed about pet shop for kids who are 6-7 years old. So these materials that I'm about to show are designed for kids who are 9, maybe 10 years old. For example, one of their units is about space. And let's take a look. Well, in the self-study, I'm going to show you the self-study first of all. Okay, just a sec. In the self-study, kids, again, they learn their vocabulary and everything about space. For example, they watch a video about space with vocabulary, they complete different tasks and so on. So they, by the beginning of the lesson, they already know some words, some vocabulary, and so on. When the kids come to the lesson, just a sec, they will do a simple task. Yeah, so over here they do a short warm-up. They find the words in a word search puzzle, and after that they go to task number 2. Ask your partner what is space, what is galaxy, what is the name of our planet, and so on. So in this case, you can easily see the communication part. Yeah, so the lesson starts basically with communication among the students. After that, they are offered to read an article about Elon Musk, for example. Very often in our books, we use different topics which are currently everywhere on the news and everything. Yeah, so they read about Elon Musk and so on and so far. In another lesson about space that is called project session, they, for example, have a project. They have, well, we call it a project because it is a craft, but it can be seen as a task where students learn about the planets, different planets, and after that they need to create their own model of the solar system and be able to tell a few facts about the planets. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. And over here they have the craft, so they color everything and then they remember better. So this task-based learning focuses not only presenting vocabulary and grammar, but also expanding the knowledge of the students about the world around us and so on. So that is a task, yeah, to do the craft, to present. Task-based learning is used here. And what about project? For example, if the unit about space is unit number 59, but in unit 58, kids had the topic of traveling. So they learned a lot about traveling, they learned some vocabulary, and they discussed how to organize a trip or how to plan a trip, what they need to take with them and so on. So a bigger project that we will offer, for example, in the second unit, in the unit about space, will be over here. I'm gonna show you like this. When kids communicate and discover, they do the project like organizing a trip to space. Yeah, that is the thing that we will ask them to do. So in this case, when they are asked to complete such a project, they need to do some research how you can go to space. They need to use some vocabulary from traveling, from space topics. They need to use the grammar for organizing a trip. by the way, grammar in this unit is future. Of course, it's easy to talk about future in the context of space. So for example, if you take a look at lesson 2, you will see that it starts with a communication task, and it is the list of questions about space tourism. So how long the tours will be, what will people eat, and so on. So the questions themselves, they have this construction of future. Students might use this wheel form or might not. It depends, but they start with communication, and after they finish this communication task, they feel the need to know how to speak about future. And that's what they do next. They have a listening task, for example, that has a lot of future examples. And after that, they see this brief rule, which is an extract from this listening, and they have this practice part where they use future tenses in different sentences. They have the communication at the end, like writing the questions and giving questions about the space trip. And at the end, it's not like exactly here in the book, but at the end, the global project is to be able to organize their trip to space and, of course, present their trip to space. So that's how we use TBL and TBL in Green Country. Of course, the life of our teachers is very easy because everything's done, everything's prepared. But what would I do if I didn't have all those materials prepared? I can say that I can remember the times when we didn't have the beautiful online platform and we worked just with normal books, as many teachers do nowadays. So for example, if we look at Good Old Family Friends, which offers PPP method in its basics, how can we change it and what we can do to make it more engaging, to make it more student-centered? Well, just a little bit of creativity and some preparation from us as teachers is needed to transform it like really a lot. So what would I do? I would bring a box with a present, like a present box. I have some at home, and I would tell my students about the birthday that I had and about the presents that I received, the presents that I liked, presents that I didn't like. Maybe for this level, I wouldn't use past tenses. I would use present tenses. In that case, I would tell about my friend or about me. Then I would ask them to discuss what presents they like, they don't like, and so on. So that would be a very short and easy communication task. I am pretty much aware that the kids of this level will not say a lot, but at least that they will communicate. And normally, students really enjoy speaking about themselves, like sharing what things they like, what things they do not. After that, the language focus. And as well, it would be a really good idea if you work with this book, for example, it would be a really good idea not to just read the story that is over here, but let the kids watch the video. I'm pretty sure you know there are videos available, video stories available for family and friends. And after that, I would elicit from my students this construction like, don't like, with the help of, happy and sad smileys on the board. I would elicit, then we would drill and practice, and then we would have a communication task. Of course, we would create a different communication task, not the one that is given here at the end. Maybe I would ask my students to design a birthday card for their friend. And in this birthday card, they need to draw everything that their friend likes. Yeah, so after that, they would present their birthday card and say and explain why there is a flower or why there is a dog in this birthday card, because my friend likes or doesn't like, dogs and so on and so on. So that's how we can use these approaches, which are more student-centered, even with students of low levels, and even if we do not have access to some very modern materials. Yay. Now, my friends, I can see that many of you have to leave. Yeah, that's basically almost it. And I would be really happy if you had some questions, if you have some comments, if you have something to say at the end of this webinar, and you can use the group chat to ask me questions about lesson formats, and I will be happy to answer them. How do you engage lazy students to do the self-study tasks? Well, it takes time to engage the students. The first time we started the self-study approach, my students were not very excited and they forgot. And basically motivation. We have contracts, we have this money that we pay our students for the lessons, so basically motivation. They get a lot of contracts for the self-study, and very often teamwork helps. So if your group feels like a team and you as a teacher see that half of the group is not prepared, is not well prepared at the beginning of the lesson, then you will need to spend a little bit more time probably for practicing this language. The students didn't practice enough at home. If it happens a few times in a row, students who really feel as a team in a group, they feel that they are missing out something, and that because of them, our fun part, our project part are shorter probably. And after some time, after a few lessons, they normally start catching up and start doing the self-studies. And also in the self-studies, we have different things like hidden treasures or something, when we just ask them to do the screenshot and get some extra contracts or something like this. So yeah, it becomes a little bit more engaging. When everybody understands it is fun, they do not feel that lazy anymore. Yay. Thank you, Tanya, for questions. Anything else we could discuss? The pre-lesson self-study is done instead of after-lesson home task. Yep, absolutely right, Mrs. Larissa. Absolutely right. Yeah, so they do not get home task, they have a self-study. So before lesson 1, they already have to learn something. And it is like really cool because every kid has their own pace of learning. Some of them need to watch this video 5 times and to remember the words. Some of them need to watch this video only once. It's okay for them to learn, to pre-learn like something before and then start using it during the lesson. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. How can you apply PBL online? Oh, whoa, not that fast. Do you ask to prepare something before the class? Well, when we had Zoom lessons as a part of online learning, we had some projects here. Normally, I would apply it in such a way that I would shorten it. And I would divide my students using the breakout rooms in Zoom. So I would divide them in smaller groups. And I can remember a project where they had to do a research and prepare a short presentation about one of the cities in Ukraine. And each group chose a different city. Then I asked them to use their smartphones to find some interesting facts about these cities. Of course, they had to use only English as a language to find the information to do their research. They communicated a little bit. They exchanged their experiences of visiting different cities, and after that they presented their findings. Yeah, so PBL would probably work better if you make it a little bit shorter, like not a whole global project, but something which is more task-based, or if it is project-based, so a project should be smaller in order to be able to complete this project within one lesson, within one online lesson, because next online lesson someone will be absent probably, and it will be a little bit more challenging. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Question about certificates. I'm not sure you will get a certificate for the participation. At this point, we're not giving out certificates, but you will get the video, the recording of this webinar. Yeah, no perfect book, extra tasks. Yep, absolutely right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating, guys. Thank you very much for your feedback, for your comments. It was a great pleasure working with you. To be honest, I was a little bit worried because of this webinar, but normally we have trainings where we like interact, change our partners, exchange our experience and ideas, but this webinar showed that it is really possible to work in that lecture format. So guys, thank you very much. I hope you will join other webinars from Green Country, and see you somewhere here. See you somewhere here on other webinars. Bye bye.